Hi, and welcome to an impromptu version of the Democracy Theater with Richard Scott. My good friend Ian from the Objective Centrist Radio.
I am the Objective Centrist. That's me. Interesting situation. We've got some itinerary that I imagine we'll probably stick to, so I'll let you start. But yeah, I'm very excited to get back to it.
Well, I think actually, the reason for your phone call was right that Saudi Arabia, where I gotta stop leaning on that table, where our president just happens to be traveling to in the next few days, has threatened to dump 740 or 50 billion dollars worth of T-bonds if the United States greenlights a lawsuit that will hold Saudi Arabia, or could hold Saudi Arabia liable for 9/11. Do I have that right? That's the broad stroke. That's what's going on, and that's what was piqued your interest, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you hit on all of those topics. Most specifically, that the most recent development, that if I might be so bold, is the old "where there's smoke, there's fire" sort of incident, where we've got a Congress that wants to declassify the 27 pages of the 9/11 report that may have implicated the Saudi government aiding and abetting some high-level members of the Saudi government, not the king or anything, supposedly. But those pages may be declassified, and now Obama is fighting, just like President Bush did, to not have them declassified. And we're so close to...
Well, that's not entirely true, right? I mean, what we know is that some survivor of the 9/11 families or something like that claims that Barack Obama had said that he would release the papers, and then it just hasn't happened yet. And I have not found anything that says that the White House is working against it, but I'm glad. I will gladly stand corrected.
Yeah. Well, Obama's under a lot of pressure to release the report, and my understanding is the administration has no plan to release the report and is not endorsing Congress, is suggesting Congress not endorse any legislation that declassifies it. They're trying to take, as I understand, and as some journalists have stated, I guess at this point I can say other journalists because I have a website now, but as some other journalists have stated, there's some diplomacy going on here behind the scenes, undoubtedly. And then, as you said, sort of the most interesting turn of events with this situation is, as I like to say, the smoke that may lead to the fire, is suddenly the president is going to Saudi Arabia to discuss something with them. We're not quite sure. The timing is sort of suspicious. So I think that, in fact, the momentum that's in Congress may be unstoppable, and the report might be declassified. If it is, it's probably going to say what intel experts that have written about this have said it says for years, which is that high-level members of the Saudi government aided and abetted the 9/11 hijackers. It's specifically Prince Bashar.
Right. So, but just because, play the devil's advocate, right? Individuals, it doesn't say anything that I've certainly not found. I have barely found that to be the argument, but certainly nobody is saying that it was the institution, that it was the Saudi government.
Right, just that there were high-level members of the Saudi government that may be extremely corrupt and may be involved in some nefarious plot. Yeah, for sure. But the fact is, those members of the Saudi government, at least one of the princes, one of the members is a prince and is very well connected to the Bush family and government administration when it was here, and was smoking cigars at the White House 3 days after 9/11. And then that, like 1 day after that meeting, is when the Saudis were basically evacuated. A number of high-level Saudis left, and the FBI declined to interview them on their involvement with 9/11 because they were untouchable diplomatically. So there's a lot of very cloak and dagger sort of things going on at a time when cloak and dagger is very easy to hide. So this sort of a coincidence seems unlikely, in my opinion, but it is totally possible this is all just some very nasty coincidence, and there was some writing on the wall, and so some Saudi intel came about, and so some high-level Saudis left after 9/11 for fear that they might get incorrectly accused. But where there's smoke, there's often fire. So I think right now the public eye should be on Obama to see what he does to negotiate if he releases. I mean, obviously we're not going to know what he says in its entirety to the Saudis, but I think we'll find out pretty quickly if he negotiated anything with them, because the momentum behind Congress is at least enough where we should know pretty quickly whether or not we're going to be able to declassify the 27, 28 pages, whatever it is.
And Congress is doing that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they have a 9/11 bill that's coming through, and it will declassify.
They're pushing for a House resolution calling for the pages to be released, right?
Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, so that's what's happening. So what?
Well, so what is, of course, that the Saudi might not.
Right?
Okay, just 30 seconds. The so what is that if Saudis are implicated in this, and the government is implicated, then Saudi interests in the United States could be frozen. And that's, to be totally direct, that's what a lot of people are worried about, as far as I can tell, is that if this is declassified, a lot of Saudi money might be frozen in American courts, by American courts. So money that these people want.
Okay. So again, how does that hurt us?
They sell off their interest in the American dollar to the tune of $740 billion.
Again.
But whether or not that will do anything.
First of all, it's T-bills, right? And they're always traded, constantly traded.
And this is why I called you. I was like, we need to talk about this. So
and they're constantly traded on the secondary market, right? And they can't just do that. So what would happen is that they would dump that, and then the interest rate on that will fall, or the United States would have to cover that, would have to state new T-bills with a higher interest rate. So then they would push the interest rate up on the new T-bills, which would make the T-bills, the rest of the T-bills that the Saudi Arabia has, worthless. So, I mean, it's just, listen, they could do it. I don't think they would. It would hurt us less than it would hurt them. They can't do anything with us they can't threaten us on energy, especially not now that we have begun normalizing our relationship with Iran, because they have an economy that's hurting. They would love for America to buy their oil, and then China can take over the Saudi oil. I just don't see the play. I don't see the play. The kingdom would collapse from within. They have, in all honesty, stoked so much religious fundamentalism within their country that if the tear gas cans in Egypt and Saudi Arabia stop saying the United States and they start saying Russia or China, I would be that they're shooting at the demonstrators, the people that want democracy and so forth. I would be so happy. Like, there's nothing that would make me happier if it was not made in the United States, right? So I just don't see the play. That doesn't mean that I don't know. I mean, the lawsuit is still moving forward in the courts, right? And that's really what they're talking about. They want to stop the lawsuit. Haven't even begun to talk about the 28 pages. So we also just have to remember to separate those two things out, right? So the lawsuit is going forward, right? That's already been, the judge have already said that. And the 28 pages may or may not be declassified, but no matter whether or not those pages are declassified, the Saudi Arabia has found it necessary to hire a image consulting company in America to try to better their image, right? So it's already, they're already skating on thin ice with the American public. The younger you go, the less tolerant people are towards these democracies, and whether or not we should, because of tradition, support them. So I don't know. I don't see it as a big deal. I don't know about the 28 pages. I would love for them to come out. I would love for us to have a truth and reconciliation hearing about 9/11 and actually get to some kind of clarification, because even though I don't believe the big government conspiracy, I still have questions that I don't feel was answered. But I digress. Ian.
You digress, you say. Well, I think what you've done is made a great point, and I'm glad that you made it. I actually agree, but I think that the context of that reality is what this conversation is really about. So, for example, we have the Saudis making a very real threat. They're saying they're going to sell off $750 billion. I mean, they made this threat publicly. Here in America, it wasn't like some editorial, like, the Chinese have editorials in state-run newspapers, and that's sort of how we realize if they're threatening us or not. They sent a delegate here, and they absolutely told us that that's what's going to happen. So it seems like a real credible threat. It really does. And they're a pretty nefarious bunch, in my opinion. I'm not a huge fan of the Saudi kingdom. So I don't think that we can totally discount them as bluffing. I really, really don't. But let's say that they are bluffing, then so what? Then we release the report, and it probably is going to say what we all think it's going to say, that people who have read it that said, we can't tell you what it said, but I'm telling you it's going to embarrass the people in Saudi Arabia, kind of thing, and the other reports that we've had that generally suggest.
If they sell, I'm sorry, but if they sell the $750 billion worth,
right, which I was just getting to. Mm-hmm.
If they get to but if they do that, I give their kingdom less than a year they'll collapse from within.
Right. The IMF has already given them 5 years to start turning their economy around, or they're going to downgrade their credit and start asking them to pay some loans or something. I wish I should have that report from me, because I just said that. The situation with liquid funds over a long period right now in Saudi Arabia is not very optimistic. It's somewhat dismal. As a matter of fact, they're just saying they're hoping to be not entirely dependent on energy exports by within 20 years. So if by 2035, they are a tourist destination, kind of like Dubai is a tourist destination as well as a very oil-rich country. And that's what they're looking to do, as far as I can understand. And they'll probably develop their universities too, but that's not like they're going to make a lot of money doing that right off the bat. They'll have to have ingenuity and then build factories and so on and so forth. So, but yeah, social functionalism in Saudi Arabia is 1950s or before level in America equivalent. So the idea that they're suddenly going to skyrocket themselves into this sort of 21st century economy that we see in Qatar and the Arab Emirates and places like that, Dubai, sort of fantasy in my opinion. They don't really have the infrastructure built up. It took years to develop the tourist destination that is Dubai, for example. So Saudi Arabia is now building, they're going to build one of the world's largest towers. It's going to be bigger than the one in Dubai, and I think then Dubai is going to build one that's bigger than that, so we'll see how long that lasts. But, Saudi Arabia is doing it right now. They're already signaling that they're going to get away from oil. So will they pull this off? Probably not. But if they do sell $750 billion worth of T-bills, and then we have to issue more T-bills to sell to the same market that they would buy, because what are they going to do with this money? Reinvest it into infrastructure or something? Probably not. They're probably going to do something very, very similar with it. So we would congest the treasury bill market with high interest treasury bills and make other people, scratch their head and go, oh, well, why aren't we doing this? So supply and demand, and feel free to stop me if I'm wrong here. This is some pretty deep economics, but my understanding is it would, like you said, because they would just go buy some other T-bills from some other country, but because of the way that supply and demand works, we would have a larger supply of higher interest rate T-bills, so it would affect their economy because then they would have to rebuy T-bills at a higher rate from somebody else.
I mean, okay, so instead of trying to get into the weeds of that, yes, both economies will be hurt, but here's the deal. Ours will be hurt less, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if we need to recapitalize, or we need to get capital to buy or to cover these T-bills, right? All we have to do is put out other T-bills, slightly higher interest rate, will make theirs, what theirs is worth. It will make it harder for them to sell, right? So it just doesn't compute, right? It doesn't make any sense. And here's the other thing. The world is kind of in an uproar. We are teetering on going into a recession, right? I think we were just downgraded again to a GDP growth projection of 0.1%, which is, we're damn near, a recession. I don't know how, by the way, that's worth a whole different podcast about what will happen if the economy crashes just before the election, in a general election, especially if Donald Trump is the candidate, that could get really ugly very fast. And we're just totally right for that. So but again, different podcast, but we're still the most secure place in the world to invest in this world, right? We're still the biggest economy. We're the strongest economy. We're the strongest military. I just don't see the play. I don't see the play.